Welcome to another morning skate edition of the Inside Edge. I'm Bob McElligott, and today at the MTS Center in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where the Blue Jackets are going to take on the Winnipeg Jets for the second time this year. Jody Shelley did not make the trip with me today, so I had to go and I had to find a pinch hitter. So who do you find for a former NHL enforcer? Who can possibly fit the bill? How about Brian Munns, who's one of the radio voices of the Winnipeg Jets here? Brian, thanks so much. I appreciate this.
Well, you could have used my color analyst, Shane Knighty. He knew how to do the Jody Shelley position as well. But, it's always fun to talk hockey. And, a Saturday in Canada is obviously fun when you look at the tradition north of the border here. And based on what we saw back in Columbus a few weeks ago, I think we're going to see a pretty good game tonight, too.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I got to tell you, for Brian and I, we've done a lot of games in this building together, but that was what seems to be many moons ago back in the American Hockey League when Syracuse Crunch would battle against the Manitoba Moose. But I've been telling everybody since we came here, because there's so many people on our team that have never been to Winnipeg and haven't done a game here or haven't been in this building for a game. And I started to count up the number of games that I've done here in the playoff series and the battles that we had between those two teams over those years. And that was some pretty good rivalry.
Well, it was, and I think you were the only broadcaster as well to spend some time in the hospital in the city here, too. So all in all, we go way back. And it's funny when you mention it because in year one for the Jets, we obviously had that split squad preseason game between the Jets and the Blue Jackets. But now that you're into regular season play, Columbus is the second final team to come into Winnipeg. The Vancouver Canucks are the only other team that haven't been here yet. And they'll be here coming up in a month or so. And it's kind of strange when you look at, the battles that you referenced earlier on between the Moose and the Crunch. And then based on the fact that the Moose were Vancouver's AHL affiliate, and they're the last team to come into the building. So lots of weird little storylines as you look at the progression here into year three in the NHL. But, fans are obviously having a lot of fun right now with the Winnipeg Jets.
As we're talking about those old rivalries, I see Derek McKenzie on the ice right now, and he was a part of that when he was in Syracuse. And Derek has just finished up his 3-game suspension from the league, so he's eligible to return to the lineup tonight. And that's somebody that the Blue Jackets are going to want. They're going to want that heart and soul guy back in there.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, it's funny when you mentioned McKenzie. Zenon Konopka was here a couple of weeks ago as well, and he was actually sitting outside the Minnesota Wild locker room, and he was waiting for a couple players to come to walk back to the hotel, and I was there, and I was just thinking, God, I used to really hate you. And we had a great visit for about 10 minutes, and we were actually joking about all the battles that he had in this building and how much time he had. So I think that's the fun part, and you and I can attest to this, and we can probably talk for hours about the players you watch in junior and then in the American League and have a chance to watch them now in the NHL. It's really neat to see the progress and a lot of fun.
I know that exact feeling you're talking about. I felt the same way about Paul Bissonnette when he used to play for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. And then last year, the year before, I had a chance to sit down and talk with him in the Phoenix dressing room. He's one of the nicest guys in the world. And that's kind of one of the differences between the American League and the National Hockey League. From our standpoint, you don't spend a lot of time around the other team in the American Hockey League. You're engrossed with your own team. The morning skates are different, so you don't get to know as many guys. You see them and you've watched them play, but you don't get to know them as people like you do in this league.
Well, that's for sure. And I think that's kind of one of the fun things when you look at it. The one thing that I will say is the pressure of the NHL on a game day. You don't have those opportunities as much, at least I think anyway. But when you look at the travel schedule that you and I get a chance to enjoy, and when you go into a building a day ahead of time and the other team will practice, or as you allude to at pregame skate, if the other media hasn't swarmed, as long as he's not a quote-unquote superstar, you can usually sit down and shoot the breeze with the guy for a while, and as you allude to, find out the other side of the guy that maybe you didn't like down the road. But there's no question that it's great to be a part of, obviously, the best league in the world now, and have some fun to see what the guys are to what they are now.
All right, let's talk about this matchup tonight, and let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets, where Claude Noel has made some changes. I don't know if you would consider them sweeping changes, but probably the biggest one is Dustin Byfuglien going to play up front instead of playing on the blue line, and Claude feels that he has something to offer playing on the wing.
Well, he does. When you look at the fact when you're 6'4", 6'5", and 270-pound plus, we were joking about it. How excited are the Columbus defensemen tonight? Probably not very, because he's one of the biggest forwards in the NHL. And the biggest thing about Dustin, too, is he's strong. He's got just that God-given strength to his size. So from a Jet standpoint, they've lost their last 4 in a row. Things aren't going well for the team here. There's been a lot of call for change, whether it's inside the locker room or behind the bench. To me, behind the bench isn't an issue. The players just haven't done what they need to do here as of late. And, maybe this has added the excitement inside the room that a lot of people have hoped that it would. And when you look at the fact, too, with Dustin going on a line here with Andrew Ladd and Brian Little, it puts Blake Wheeler onto a line with Ole Jokinen and Devin Setaguchi. And those two players haven't had a lot of success either. Jokinen's been okay, but Setaguchi hasn't scored a goal in 17 games now. And maybe it sparks those two. And overall, just adds a little bit of something new inside the locker room that hasn't been there for a few weeks.
Well, quite honestly, this is a franchise that when they were in Atlanta only went to the playoffs one time and didn't win a playoff game. So there have been struggles. And as you said, now there are calls for change. Is the honeymoon over here in Winnipeg as far as the fans are concerned?
Some days it is and some days it isn't. It really seems to be a roller coaster. And I think you're bang on when you talk about the fact that Atlanta wasn't a good team. That's why they're not there anymore. They just couldn't get it going. And when you look at where we were 3 years ago on May 31st when it was announced the NHL was coming, you went to anybody that was going to be a fan or lived in Winnipeg or surrounding area. If the team would have went 0-82, they were fine with it. The NHL's back. They had a chance to watch their team. They have a chance to watch the other 29 clubs come in. Now there is the expectation. And it's interesting when you talk to people, and you hear it a lot on our post-game show when people call in and talk to our hosts. They're like, geez, this team has to be better. But then you throw back, well, we're only 2.5 years into a new process here. Or even if you want to look at it, theoretically, they're 2 years into it because last year was the shortened season, and we're only into just over a half of a year here now. So there's no question that, people would like the team to be better than they are. But when you look at it going into this year and you throw in the fact, too, that they're involved in that Central Division, which might be the toughest division in the league, there's good teams on all sides. But when you look at who they had to go against this year and you make your predictions at the beginning of the year, the Jets are probably where you thought they would be. Maybe they might be a couple position points higher, but when you look at it, they were probably going to be around a 500 team or maybe a little bit better. They weren't going to be better than Chicago. They weren't going to be better than St. Louis. Colorado's been a surprise with the way they came out of the gate and have kind of come back down to earth a little bit here. But when you look at the other teams that they go up against each and every night, it's a battle. And, no disrespect to teams in the Southeast Division, but there were more winnable games over the first year and a half when they were in the league compared to where they are now. So for most people, I think it's not a surprise to where they were. I think everybody would just like to see them win more than they are.
Well, you don't have to tell me about the Central Division.
Well, exactly. You guys don't mind this at all.
No, but in the Metropolitan Division, teams are starting to get hot. I talked about this last night. Carolina had won 5 in a row going into last night's game. Teams are starting to make a move. So for the Blue Jackets, a chance to go with 3 straight wins here and keep this ball rolling is exactly what they need to do. Sergei Bobrovsky was stellar last night. And, Brian, I would imagine that for the Jets, they're looking at that and saying, this looks like a guy that won the Vezina Trophy last year.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the million-dollar question because as we speak here today, we haven't heard from Todd Richards yet exactly what the plan will be, whether it's McElligott or Bobrovsky. And you look at the fact, too, the time that these teams played about 3 weeks ago before the Christmas break, there was no Nathan Horton. And Claude Noel talked about that this morning, that when you add one of the premier power forwards in the NHL back into your lineup, it's going to pose a bit of an issue here for the opposition. So really intrigued to see what this game has to bring tonight. I think when you look at it, the Jackets coming in with 44 points in 44 games. The Jets were in that exact same scenario a few games ago where they had that exact same number in their standings position inside the Central Division. So I think we're in for a heck of a hockey game here tonight. It's two teams, obviously, that are battling and should make for a fun game.
Talking about the goaltending, Sergei Bobrovsky is on the ice this morning, along with Derek McKenzie, and Dalton Prout is the only other guy that is on the ice. And Dalton Prout, he's having a hard time cracking back into the lineup right now. The defense is playing well. The team is winning, so he has to wait for his turn. The Blue Jackets got in about 1 o'clock in the morning. Of course, that's Central Time, so 2 o'clock body clock time for the Blue Jackets. But all in all, Brian, even though it's a 6 o'clock game here in Winnipeg tonight, it's not the end of the world. You're not showing up at 3 or 4 in the morning.
No, it's not. And, we had a good time to reminisce about this, about our AHL days at the beginning of this conversation. And you and I were used to seeing the clubs go through, and we were used to broadcasting 3 games in 2.5 days. So for the guys that have gone through the junior circuit in the American League, it's really not a big deal. Obviously, there's more pressure and that kind of thing when you look at for them playing in the NHL. But yeah, it's not a really bad scenario for them. And obviously, with the coach's decision to leave the guys at the hotel today, they get a good morning to sleep in. They have a chance to have a pregame meal, another little nap, and then they come to the rink by about 3:30 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. So all in all, I don't think the back-to-back's going to be a big issue. And from a Jets standpoint, they haven't really taken advantage of that scenario either. They've had teams playing the back end of a doubleheader 5 times, and they're 3-2. They're only 1 game above 500 in that mark here. So a lot of really intriguing storylines here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll guarantee you this, if the Blue Jackets hadn't played as well as they did last night, you'd have a lot more than 3 guys on the ice here today. There's only one thing I know for certain tonight. The one thing I can say with absolute certainty, I'm not going to get appendicitis in this building again because that's already been done. It can't happen. That's the only thing I know is a definite here tonight.
Well, then you can also pretty much guarantee that we're going to see a good hockey game. So you bring one thing to the table, I'll bring one to the other, and fans in Winnipeg and Columbus should be all good.
Yeah, it'll be great. Brian, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Great to see you.
Anytime, Bob. Fun to catch up.
Brian Munns from the Winnipeg Jets radio network, and the Blue Jackets and Jets get together tonight. It'll be a 7 o'clock start in Columbus, and you'll be able to catch the game on the Blue Jackets radio network. I'll have it for you this evening. That'll do it for this morning's the morning skate edition of the Inside Edge. That's what it's called, so that's what I should say. I'm Bob McElligott. Thanks for tuning in.